everyone, it's Evelyn and welcome to the very first flower farming Q&A. I'm going to go over the 4 videos of this past month, and I'm going to actually start though with a question from my community posts that I thought was relevant to put into the Q&A as well. But first, before I forget, the very next Q&A will be on February 26th. Following the last Saturday video of the month of February. Okay, so let's get on to the first question. Now in the community post, I put up a picture of the very first vase that I bought this year for selling little vases at my flower stand. And in that community post, I was asked by Cherryberry, cool name, Cherryberry9633. She says, "It is adorable. Do you sell your vases separately from the flowers, or will you bundle both flowers and vase?" Now, both and not. So in the very beginning of the season, when I'm not selling bouquets yet, but I'm selling tulips, daffodils, and hyacinths, not in that order, hyacinths first, then daffodils and tulips, at the flower wagon, I may have a few little vase arrangements up there as well, with just some short little flowers in it. This is an example of a vase arrangement that I sold up at the flower wagon, although this is clearly when the peonies were blooming. But I tend now not to do flower arrangements once I start having bouquets, because I realized that once somebody's bought 1 or 2, possibly 3, who knows, vases, they're not going to buy vase arrangements anymore because they have the vases. So what I do instead is I sell the vases empty and sell flowers in my pop cans, short stemmed, so that the short stems of the flowers that I have in the pop cans fit into the vases really nicely, and they can buy as many pop cans as they want. I see them quite often at the flower wagon because I can see it through my office window right here. They'll have a vase that they want to buy, and then they'll play around to see what flowers they want to buy from the pop cans to get an arrangement that they like. And that's usually if it's a gift for somebody, because generally people don't gift pop cans to people. But they will take the pop cans themselves and then put the flowers in their small vases at home. So I sell a lot of pop cans. So that is how I sell the little vases. They are a nice addition to the flower wagon because, again, my property, I'm in the city, is only 1/8 of an acre, which includes our house, 2-car garage, and a long driveway that runs the length of our property. So the actual growing space on it for flowers is quite small compared to most. So to have a few additional value-added products that I can sell is, of course, really nice. So that's the question for my community post that I wanted to answer here on this Q&A. And now we're going to get into the videos, and the very first video we're going to go over was the first one I did this month, which is the top 10 focal flowers. So the first question that I'm going to address on my top 10 focal flowers comes from Canadian Gardening 6A. And I'm assuming that's Zone 6A. She asks, "Have you grown Lizzianthus? I ordered some and so many bad reviews on germination. Just wondering. I'm still going to try it if the seeds arrive. Thanks." So I said, nope, everyone says it's a pain to grow from seed and most flower farmers just buy plugs can't help. So then she replied again saying you could try it and prove them wrong. And I thought, actually, I could try it. There's nothing wrong with me not trying it, because I do like to try a few new flowers every year. A lot of them, it proves that there's a reason I wasn't growing them. But sometimes I hit upon a gem that I really like. So I thought, yeah, okay, I'll order some Lizzianthus and try them out and see what I think. Now I ordered Lizzianthus Roseanne to Terracotta, and I got it from Johnny's, and I got an email on January 11th saying the seeds were on their way. I ordered a couple of other things too. And I have not received them yet. So it looked like I might receive them too late to actually do anything with them. So I'll just hang on to the seeds and try them next year. Because if I haven't received them yet, we're already getting down to the very end of January. Getting into February is really pushing it for Lizzianthus. So I probably will just hang on to them until next year. The next question is Changing Times 1776, and they say, Hi Evelyn, how many tulip bulbs do you put per 1-gallon pot? Thanks so much. Now that's because if you follow my channel at all, you'll know that I do not grow tulips as a cut flower. I grow them and sell them in 1-gallon pots. And I put 3 in a pot, and this is what they look like right now. I took this picture just, I think 2 days ago. So they're just starting to break the surface. And the reason why 3 is because I'll never get 4 tulip bulbs in a pot, and 4 flowers in a pot isn't as aesthetically pleasing as 3. 5 would be aesthetically pleasing, but that's too many, and 2 or 1 are just too few. And then the thing is if you put 3 in there, sometimes you only get 2, and that's fine. If they're the last pots there, people will still buy them. But 3 guarantees that you won't only have 1 tulip growing in the pot. It guarantees that you'll have 2 or 3. 9 times out of 10, it's 3. And it just looks good in the pot. It's the right mass for the plot. For the pot. So as you can see in this picture, I've got this is the last year picture. Can't remember what day I took it, but you can see I've got daffodil pots on the one side, hyacinth pots in the middle that are blooming, and I'm already selling them at the flower wagon, and then tulip pots off to the other side. And you can see with the 3 bulbs in each pot, it's just a perfect amount of mass for the flowers to really showcase them well in a 1-gallon pot. And then when they go up to my flower wagon, they of course will look really pretty paired with whatever else I'm growing in the pots that is blooming at the time. And frankly, I will put them up if they're not blooming yet, because you can see here on the top shelf in the flower wagon, which is where I put my little vases, I put up the price sheets and I put pictures of each of the daffodils, hyacinths, and tulips that I'm growing, so that you can see the pot, and I've written on it in grease pencil when I've put the bulbs in them, because the grease pencil won't wear off over the winter. You can look at the name on the pot, and you can look at the picture on the price sheet and see what it looks like. So they don't even have to be blooming when I get them up to the flower wagon. And since the hyacinths is the first one to bloom, I will always have mostly hyacinths up, but I'll have 3 daffodil pots and 3 tulip pots anyway. And then people can see them and decide that, well, they would like to have some daffodils and tulips as well. So that's how that works with my tulip pots. You can see the top pot up there on the flower wagon picture is actually a hyacinth. Pardon me, it's a daffodil, but it's one that has multi-heads. And you can see that the volume of 3 bulbs is just perfect for a 1-gallon pot. Now, I'd appreciate it if you took a moment to like this video if you're enjoying it. Thanks very much. Let's get on to the next question. So, Glaze Arrow, don't know if that's how you say it, says, hi, how did you include the mini pumpkins in the bouquet? Did you glue them on a stick? No, I don't use glue. I did use a stick, although not really a stick. I used a barbecue skewer and I rammed it into the pumpkin. I put my hand on the top of the pumpkin and I rammed the skewer in as high as I could, where I couldn't feel it getting ready to break the surface of the top of the pumpkin. And then I rammed the skewer into an applicable type of stem that it could go into to be used in the bouquets. And I will put a link at the end of this video to my, what's it actually called? Let me just see what it's called. How to DIY pumpkin on a stem to use in bouquets. I'll put a link at the end of this video so you can go back and watch that video to see exactly how I do it. And this is what the bouquet looked like that I used in that video to use as an example of a pumpkin bouquet. I only had one Jacoby little pumpkin come up because I planted them too late, so I could only do the one bouquet. Next question we have is from Wells 12, and she asks, what zone are you in? I'd love to get dahlias that early, but for me, it's never until dang near September. Wow, that's late. Can I try a different variety, or do you have a long season? I have, for dahlias, I have a long season, but the reason I get them as early as I do is because I start them early. And in fact, on Saturday, which is only Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it was only 3 days from when you're watching this video, my video will go up on how I start dahlias, because I will have already got them started. I start them in my seed room for around February 1st. In this case, I'm doing it a few days earlier so I can get the video up in time for the Saturday. And what that does is it gets the dahlias going. If there's any that I want to divide more, then I can divide them more. If I want to do any cuttings on them, I can get that done. Because if you take cuttings, they will bloom later too. But if you get them going as early as February and you take some cuttings in the first few weeks of February, you're fine with those cuttings to get flowers. But also the reason I like to do that, okay, off, you're getting in the way of the camera. There we go. The way I like to do it is they get quite tall in the seed room by the time I start hardening them off, which is about halfway through April, because I do plant them out mid-May. And what ends up happening is I have to pinch them so that they don't get taller than my grow lights. And most people pinch them after they've sprouted from the ground by a good 6-12 inches. And then they pinch them, which of course sets them back even more. And I don't have to do that because pretty well all of them, not all of them, maybe 80% of them are already pinched by the time I get them into the ground. So they've got a really good head start on the flowering season. And I've got 2 dogs who think I'm talking to them. Hey, Leela. Oh, I shouldn't have said her name because now Ezra's coming running back. Anyway, so I'm way ahead of the game by starting my dahlias early in my seed room, and you'll see how I start them on Saturday. Okay, what's the next question? Oh, no, off. Oh, yeah, before I get on to the next question, here's a picture of my seed room right now. You can see, well, it's 2 pictures that I put together. Hang on a sec. Off. Leela, off. It's 2 pictures that I put together of both sides of the seed room. Now, you can see on one side, I've got all my seed trays ready to go. And in a lot of spaces, I've got them doubled up. You can see on the other side, I also have seed trays, especially on the bottom, doubled up because I've got 3 rows full of paper bags with wood chips in them, flakes from our planer, and inside those bags are all of my dahlia tubers. So I have to get them going also before I start any of my other seeds because the bags of tubers are in the way. And also the temperature. I will have to put some heat going on in there to get seeds starting going. And that means I better have those dahlias already in pots because it's already hovering around 11, 12 degrees through the winter. And that is, getting to be a little bit warm for storing tubers. Anything warmer than that, way too warm. If I start getting the heater going in there and getting it up to 17 degrees Celsius, which is what I like to have it at, the tubers aren't going to like that unless they're already started. So that's another reason why I'm starting my dahlia tubers probably tomorrow. I'm going to get them started. Okay. Again, if you're enjoying this video and you've watched any of my other videos or look forward to them and you haven't yet, please subscribe. Really appreciate that. Now, what have we got next? We have Canadian Gardener 6A asked, when do you bring your ranunculus out of hibernation? And I will say, shortly after I get all the dahlias spotted up. They come first. I will probably, I don't know if I'm doing the ranunculus next. I may do my the things that I want to, well, sweet peas I like to get out into the ground at the end of February. So I like to get them going as early in February as possible. So I'll probably do the sweet peas first. And as long as I'm doing actual seeds, I might get bachelor buttons done at the same time. But then after the seeds that I want to start really early, then I will do the ranunculus and the anemones. And it'll only be the difference of a few days, really. So it doesn't really matter which ones I get first done. But I do like to get the sweet peas done first, just because I do like to get them out into the garden as soon as possible. I don't direct seed into the garden anything. We have a huge bird population where I live. We're also right on the migratory path, as in there are days when our property is just covered in birds. When I say we're on the migratory path, I mean we are a stopping ground on the migratory path. So any seeds that would be on the ground within easy reach do get cleaned out by the birds. So nothing gets started in the ground. So I will get my sweet peas started in the seed room and then planted out, hopefully in the last week of February. And I say hopefully, only weather dependent. Okay, so we are now going to move on to the second video for January, which was called Top 10 Filler Flowers. The first question is from Yannicka Quilt, and she has a question. She says, if you had to choose just 5 dahlias to make bouquets, which ones would they be? I know it's hard, LOL. I tried 30 different dahlias last summer and only liked one because the ones I had were too small. I think I like dinner plates. Well, if you're following me for a while, and I know Yannicka Quilt has, I love dinner plates, and if I could only pick 5, all 5 of them will be dinner plates. They are what I am best known for. Many times people ask me when I will have my dinner plate dahlias ready to go. And strangely enough, I've had 3 people ask me this month, January, if I have flowers yet. What? It's January. Of course not. That's just weird. But anyway, yeah, I've had 3 people already ask me if I have bouquets available to purchase, and the answer is no, not until, I probably won't even have the flower wagon out until the beginning of April, and that's going to be with hyacinths and then daffodils and tulips. Possibly camellia bouquets. So I had to really think hard about that because I have a lot of favorite dinner plate dahlias, but I've never really thought if I could only grow 5, what would they be? And so I had to say, okay, that changes what my top 10 would be, because if I could only grow 5, they would have to be all very prolific blooming. They would have to bloom for the whole course of the season, because some dahlias bloom late. And if they bloom late, then I don't have use of them for the first few months or so. Like I start getting dinner plate dahlias usually around the beginning of July. I didn't get them till about mid-July this year, but usually about the beginning of July, straight through the first killing frost, which this year wasn't until the end of November, and I actually closed up shop up at the road with my flower wagon mid-November, only because we were into a stormy season, long stormy season of lots of wind and lots of rain. So there's no point in having it up there because nobody stops their car and gets out in that kind of weather to buy anything. So I actually closed the flower wagon up for the very first time before a killing frost. So I had to look at what blooms well from basically July through and into November. What's prolific in its blooming? What has good tubers, just in case I have a lot of weak tubers that year, and it should give me enough good tubers that I can at least reproduce the number of plants that I want, if not more. And which I find the most functional in my bouquets. So the first one I decided that I would have to include is Spartacus, because Spartacus is one that blooms throughout the whole blooming season for the dinner plate dahlias, has really good production, has really good tubers, like fat tubers, and I use it a lot. I love that color, and it's a color that I really enjoy using in bouquets, so that would be my number 1. And as you can see in here, I've got it paired with Espresso Gladiola, which is also the same color, it just has a beautiful depth of color. That deep red I don't like as much in small flowers, but in a big flower, it gives a bit more nuance. It's not just the dark shadow spot. Because of the size of the flower, you see a lot more nuance in the flower. So I really enjoy using that deep, dark burgundy kind of red as a dinner plate dahlia in bouquets. The next one I absolutely would have to have is AC Loomis. And for all the same reasons. It blooms throughout the whole blooming season. In fact, it's one of the first dinner plate dahlias to bloom, and it goes right up until the end. It goes a lot pinker in the end. I mean, its color starts to pale. I love that white frosting on the tips of the petals. It has really, really good tubers, and I really enjoy using it in bouquets. As you can see here, it does much the same as Spartacus, except it's not a deep red, it's more of a crimson. And the white frosting on the leaves, and then the center part, which isn't open yet in this one, adds that extra little bit of white, which is a dance. And that's also a secret to having better vase life in your dahlias. It's not to harvest them when the whole thing is open. Harvest them before the full flower is open, and you'll gain vase life. I get 7 days of my dinner plate dahlias, no problem. The third one I decided that I would definitely have to include in my top 5 is Labyrinth. It is very productive. It produces lots of tubers. It's a beautiful, beautiful flower. I love using it, and it's a completely different color than the other two, although it's still in the same color family. But I definitely have to include that because I do use it. Like when I have more flowers than I need, which is what I hope for, so that I have good advertising from the road, because I grow all of my dahlias in my front garden beds, flower beds, and I want there to be lots of flowers on the plants to be seen from the road. And it's one that really does that because of how prolific it is. But I do use a lot of it when I have more flowers than I need. And you can see it here in a bouquet. It's good for a softer looking bouquet. I've got it here paired with the white light sunflowers, some Costa Silver snapdragons, and some rose bonbon cosmos. It really is quite a beautiful flower. The fifth one was the one that was really hard to decide. I knew for a fact those four. Was that four? No, sorry. I knew for a fact those three. It was the fourth and the fifth ones that were really, really hard, because those three were given no matter what. But then I had to start thinking about, well, what would the other two be? The color should be different. And I decided that Wanda's Capella, which is a favorite of mine, it's almost one of the first, it is the first dinner plate dahlia that I ever grew because it was given to me. It's a beautiful, beautiful dinner plate dahlia. It catches a lot of attention. When I was first just growing that one, people would pull over in their car if they saw me working outside and ask me what it was. And because it's a completely different color, it's really, really important too. It's not as prolific as the other three in its flowers, but it does produce a lot of good tubers, and it does bloom consistently. And the fact that it is a different color, if I was only growing 5, would be really, really important. Now you can see it here in this bouquet. I've got it paired with white light sunflowers. There is actually a labyrinth around the other side. I've got some poppy pods, some marjoram, and of course laurel leaves. Now, I will say that yellow is not the most popular color in bouquets for me to sell, but that doesn't mean it's not popular. It just means it's not as popular. But still, you can't have your most popular bouquet being the only bouquet that you buy, because there's other people that want to buy from you too. If 80% of the population wants to buy one particular color, and that's all you have available, then you're losing out on 20% of the population for purchasing your flowers. So, and I know specifically one person who that is absolutely their favorite flower to buy. So then it came down to the fifth one, and I was having a really hard time with this one because I knew it had to be Lindsay Michelle, but I'm going, but it should be a different color. But this one's yellow and pink, which is basically the same two color families that I've now had in the other four. And so I was going back and forth and back and forth. No, it's got to be a different one. It's got to be a different color. And then I finally thought, no, it doesn't. That has to be the fifth one. It's very prolific with its flowers. It's very prolific with its tubers. It blooms the whole season. It looks really harsh and hard and impossible to use in a bouquet, and yet it's just absolutely beautiful in a bouquet because it blends out with whatever other colors that you have in the bouquet, as you can see here with the white light sunflowers and the marjoram and the black button bachelor buttons. I mean, it doesn't have that harshness when it's surrounded by a whole lot of other stuff. And it's really popular in the bouquets, so it has to be the number 5. So those are my top 5 dahlias if I could only grow 5. So I'm going to, because I mentioned top 10 dahlias, I'm going to also at the end of this video, along with the one on pumpkins, I'm going to leave a link to my top 10 dahlias for 2024. So Canadian Gardener asked, I have noticed that you make your own potting soil. Do you pasteurize your garden soil before using it? One time I bought potting soil from Costco and I ended up with fungus gnats for months. You don't seem to have a problem. I don't have a problem with fungus gnats because I don't buy potting soil. I made that decision quite a while ago because I looked into it because I was watching YouTube videos and I noticed that everybody who uses potting soil has fungus gnats. And I don't want fungus gnats in my seed room. So I thought, well, if I don't want fungus gnats, I'm not going to buy potting soil. And I make my own soil because I'm constantly direct composting throughout the course of the winter. And in the process of direct composting, you always end up with more soil than you originally started with. So I thought, well, I'm going to save all of the soil that I have direct composted, and I'll use that in my seed room. And what I do is I put it in garbage cans and I set it aside until it's time to get going in my seed room. And when it's time to get going in my seed room, I will use it. Now, I'm just going to show you a quick little video. I'm just setting myself up of how I have it in garbage cans. So as you can see here, this is my driveway up to the road. And then if you follow down the length of the cedar trees, you'll notice that behind them I have 3 garbage cans there. And that is my soil from the garden that I have collected. I used to have 6 garbage cans, but I used 3 of them for my hyacinths, daffodils, and tulips. And you see here when the lid's open, it's just full of garden soil. And I leave it there. And the idea is that when we get frozen soil in the winter, which for us is not that often, it's usually only for a few days, once or twice a year, once or twice in the winter, that will kill off any bugs that might be in the garbage cans, because the coldness can come in from all the way around and through the top. So it can penetrate right through to the center of the core of all that soil in the garbage can. Now, unfortunately, I'm starting my dahlias tomorrow, which means I'm going to be starting to take soil out of the garbage cans to do my dahlias tomorrow. And we haven't had frozen ground yet. So I'm hoping the freezing wasn't even necessary, because the soil will be used straight from the garbage cans, hasn't gone through any pasteurization, wouldn't want to put it through pasteurization, because that's high heat and that kills all the good microbiology that's in your soil, which is why when you start seeds in potting soil, you generally have to do some hand fertilizing in your seed rooms, which I don't do. My garden soil is very, very healthy, and that's all my seedlings need. If it was pasteurized, there would be no health benefits left in the soil. It would just be a growing medium. So hopefully I don't have a bug problem when I start my dahlias tomorrow. We shall see. So the next question is from Common Law 5400. Question, from Southern York County, Pennsylvania, zone 6-7-ish, how do you protect your arrangements from the blasting heat of the summer sun and stabilize against the wind? Do you use 1, flower food? No. 2, crowning glory? Don't even know what that is. 3, quick dip? No. Thanks, I appreciate your generosity. What I do is I make sure my plants are well watered through the growing season. I probably water my flowers more than most people, because healthy flowers, once they're cut, will stand up for longer. My dahlias, for example, in the summer, once they're starting to bloom, normally I will water them twice a day, once in the morning and once around dinner time. And then if we get above 30 degrees Celsius, I might add in a 3rd watering. Especially if we get into the high 30s, I will definitely add in a 3rd watering. This past summer, I just decided to do an experiment and not to do that and just water them once a day, just to prove to myself that that was actually a difference. And boy, did I get a lot less blooms. It was definitely a difference. You have to water to make your flowers as healthy as possible, so that when you harvest them, they are really healthy to begin with and can hold up for longer. The other thing is I'm going to go back to my dahlias for this one to show you what I'm talking about. I don't stake my dahlias individually. In this picture, you can see my 2 center beds, not from last year, this is from a few years ago. And I lasso, I've got them 4 deep and about 12 long in the first bed here, and I just lasso at 2 different heights. So when the winds and the rains come in, they're getting knocked around. So again, that creates a tougher flower. And so when you cut them and put them in the flower wagon, if it's windy, they're accustomed to moving around and getting knocked about a bit by the weather. I avoid the snapping off of the stems on my dahlias at ground level by planting them where the bottom of the tuber is 6 inches deep. So when my dahlia plants grow and they're already 6 inches tall, already pinched and 6 inches tall, when I plant them out, I plant them 6 inches below grade, and if they're only 6 inches tall, they'll just be above the soil surface, which is why I actually prefer them 12 inches tall when I plant them, because then I already have a 6-inch plant going. I don't use any netting on any of my other flowers, like snapdragons or cosmos or anything like that. I want the wind and the weather to be prominently affecting them so that when they get up into the flower wagon, which is not protected, they're already used to having to stand up on their own to weather. I don't care if my snapdragon is a little bit wonky. I think it adds a little bit of fun into the bouquet. My cosmos, I pinch a lot because I really only use them later on in the season. So they've already developed thicker stems because the bud heads have been getting, I don't pinch them in the beginning. I pinch them once they start getting bud heads. And they seem to get thicker stems because of that. But yeah, I don't do any staking or netting of any of my flowers, and that is what helps them overcome dealing with wind in the flower wagon. Now, as far as heat goes, I can only grow things, well, I can only make bouquets out of things that can withstand the heat in the flower wagon, because it does get nailed up at the road. It gets sun most of the day. I have shade netting on 3 sides of the flower wagon, but of course not on the front. And that front gets sun in it for the latter half of the day, like from about 3 o'clock onwards. So heat is my biggest thing that I have to deal with, and the flowers that I use in the flower wagon have to be able to put up with the heat. So clearly the flowers that I'll use in the flower wagon in the spring will be different than the ones that I use in August. So we're now going to go on to my next video, which was my top 10 foliage fillers. So Canadian Gardening 6A said Ezri's ear looks painful. She had a hematoma in her ear, and it was a really big one. That must have been scary. Foliage. I have seen you use pine branches. Have you tried cedar? Thank you. No, and the reason is because I have a friend who makes soap. And I asked her if she'd ever used cedar in her soap. And she said she doesn't because too many people are allergic to it, and she can't sell very much soap with cedar in it for that reason. So I thought, okay, I'm not using cedar in my bouquets. If she has done cedar soap with cedar in it, and they don't sell because of the number of people in our area that have allergies to it, then clearly it's not a good thing for me to include in my bouquets either. And we have a lot of cedar in the area that I live in here in Campbell River on Vancouver Island, which is just off the west coast of BC, Canada. And it's one of those things that if you are sensitive to it, if you're around it a lot, your allergies can get worse to it, and it causes a lot of prickliness in people. And I don't think I want to be selling bouquets that a lot of people might not want to touch. So that would be a no for the cedar, and that would be the reason why. So then, oh, I just shut that down. Now I got to go open the next one. Sorry about that. The next question is from Shelly Job 616, and she says, have you ever used Nasturtium as a foliage in your bouquets? I just saw it used in a UK flower farmer's bouquet and was intrigued as it was so bright and airy looking. In the South US where I live, they do well in full sun. I wasn't sure if this could be a container option for your deck where it could sprawl. Well, I've never even thought of using Nasturtium in my bouquets for 2 reasons. One, I really dislike the plant. I don't like the flowers. I understand how the foliage would look good in it, but 2, from any research that I've done, it says it doesn't like the heat. And it doesn't like to be dry. So if it was on my deck, where we're pretty sloppy about making sure we water things in the intense heat that my deck gets, I can't imagine it would do well. I mean, lavender doesn't do well on my deck. So I'm actually really surprised that the South US can grow Nasturtium well based on what I've read about it. So I don't know. But no, I don't even like the flowers, so I wouldn't grow it simply for that reason. So now, that was it for that video. We're now going to move on to the worst cut flowers. So Alison Burgess 345 says, haha, the dogs think you're talking to them the whole time. Nice video. Yeah, they do. As soon as, because, you know, usually when I'm by myself working in my office, I'm quiet. So if I'm talking, I must be talking to them. Nice video. Thank you. My question is, would you ever consider getting a bit more land to grow flowers on? Have you always been a keen flower grower gardener, or is it your artistic training that makes you want to paint with flowers? And she's asking that because I am an artist, and in fact I have this painting as a limited edition up at the Campbell River Art Gallery member show right now. I have never considered getting a bit more land to grow flowers on, because to get more land to grow flowers on, your costs obviously really go up because you have to buy the land. And if I want a number crunch on how long it would take me to recover the cost of the land and how much time and effort I would have to put into that, and then take my labor into account, how much longer it would take me to recover that, that might be something that I would consider doing if I was in my 20s or early 30s, but no longer at my age. It would take far too long to recover the costs on that. So that is just an absolute no-brainer, no. And in fact, there was somebody here in our town who, her and her husband bought a new house plus the empty lot beside it to grow flowers on, to sell the flowers as bouquets. And she went the whole trying to do it properly, big splash Facebook page, pumping out posts, etc. And I think her flower farm lasted about 2 years, and then she shut it down. It's just not an efficient use of time and money when you're not young, because you have lots of time to recoup the costs of the money that you've put out, as well as the costs of your labor that you've put out. As far as possibly, instead of buying land, having use of somebody else's land, I have been offered that. I've had a number of people offer me to grow flowers on their property if I need more space, and I don't want to do that either, because there is still costs and time involved with that. Costs would be gas. You would always have to drive there and drive back, and there's always the time that you have to spend in the travel time, etc. And I do take my time into consideration, and I am a profitable flower farm, but only because I take all those details into account. I take my time into account, and I'm not going to pay myself minimum wage. If I'm going to pay myself minimum wage, I'd rather just go out and get a minimum wage paying job, which I don't want to do. So there's that. Have I always been a keen flower grower gardener? No, never grew flowers. I was always a veggie flower farmer. I loved growing vegetables from the point of a very young child. I'll put a picture up here of me as a very young child. I have a little container in my hand that has water in it, because apparently I told my mom it was my job to look after the strawberries. I wanted to look after the strawberry plants. So I'm on my way to water the strawberries. And I grew the strawberries on my own, and I watered them, and I looked after them, and I harvested them, and I gave them to everybody in the family, but I wouldn't eat them because I saw the slugs and things. But for whatever reason, even though I didn't eat them myself because of the bugs, I took charge of the strawberries at a very young age. And I've always been into food growing. We grew up in Kitsilano in Vancouver, BC. Kitsilano is an area. And at that time, now it's like one of the more expensive places that you can live anywhere, especially in North America. But at the time, it was an immigrant community, so everybody had food gardens in their backyards. And I loved the idea of, I loved being in the garden. I loved the idea of the garden being productive. So when Bruce is my husband, decided that we were going to leave Vancouver, we bought 5 acres on Cortes Island. This is a picture of our home that we had on Cortes Island. And it was 20 years of mature landscaping on it. And my addition to that was not flowers. The perennial flowers that were there is the only flowers that that property had. My addition to it was I put in a massive food garden. I can't remember the size of it now, but it was very, very massive. There was no food garden on it when we bought the property. I was all about growing food. And when we bought the house just before you think that, that's such a charming place to live. What a beautiful place to live. This is what happens in the winter when your water freezes when you live on Cortes Island. That is my husband hauling water because our water lines to our house froze. You can see the house at the top of the picture. So he had to go down to our holding pond because we had a holding pond on a creek, which is where we got our water. And because on Cortez Island, water comes from creeks or from wells. And the creek was an underground creek, so the water was really, really pure. So we had water rights on it. But the lines would cut across to the workshop. And in the workshop, there was a pump that pumped the water up to the house. But the lines from the holding pond to the workshop weren't buried deep enough. And every so often, they would freeze. And you would have to go down to the holding pond and drag the water back up to the house. So island life isn't always all it's cracked up to be. But anyway, so when we bought the house that we're in now, I continued on with a food garden. And then I started growing and selling the dahlias. And I did that in the front garden. And slowly, the front garden, flower garden, a flower farm, because that's all I sold for the first few years, started encroaching into the food garden in the back. And eventually, it's become mostly a part of the flower farm, although I still grow some food crops. The thing is we have a farmer's market that I can walk to, which has organic produce of every kind, starting mid-May through to mid-September. So I have access to lots of organic food to purchase here, so I don't necessarily need to grow it all. I just grow the vegetables or fruit that is prolific for me to grow, and then anything else I can just buy. Okay, so the next question is, Lydium Cloughlin 7100 says, LOL, go figure about the dahlias I bought with Sylvia. I think I got it on clearance at Vases for $5. That's cheap. I ruined it because after I dug it up to store it, I cut it wrong. Oh well. I'm really not a fan of dahlias because I didn't get much production out of them. Maybe I'm growing it wrong. Would you do a video on your most prolific ball type dahlias? I tried the dinner plate ones. They are difficult to put in a bouquet because they are so massive, so I'm going to try ball type. And the answer is yes, I will do a video of that sometime in the next month or two. Also a question for your Q&A. If you had to start all over again, what flowers would you plant first for your flower farm? Well, if I had to start all over again now versus if I went back 7 years in time to when I started my flower farm, those would be completely different answers. I started with just the dahlias for the first 2 years. I started in 2018. And then in 2020, I started adding more flowers into my production line, for want of another word. If I could go back, I would have also added peonies into that initial line of just dahlias because of how long they take before they start producing. If I had to start now, it would really depend where I was starting. Am I starting again here on my property? Like if I hadn't started at all and I was starting just now, or is it because I moved and I'm starting somewhere else? I don't really have an answer because that's too hypothetical, and I really don't deal in hypotheticals. I have no regrets in how I did it other than I wish I had started peonies sooner, and yet without any knowledge, I wouldn't have done it any differently because I didn't even know that I wanted to grow and sell flowers, and the dahlias were my dipping my toe into it. And I got such favorable, positive response from that I continued with the dahlias the next year. And then I thought, well, this is working really, really well. Maybe I'll expand and try some other flowers so that I have something before July to sell, because my flower selling season was really only July until frost. So that's the only reason I started adding more flowers into my production, is just to increase my sales season. So that was that question, and I'm just going to show you a picture here of what my original flower wagon looked like. It was pretty hokey because when you're starting out growing flowers, you shouldn't spend a lot of money until you know that that's actually what you want to do. So this is pretty basic. The next question is from Deborah Hockenberry, 5440. How many stems do you put in the pop cans, and how much do you sell them for? Do you use borage as a cut flower? I use the blues with my red, white, and blue bouquets for Memorial Day and July 4th bouquets. Well, I'm in Canada, so we don't have 4th of July. So There's no red, white, and blue bouquets that happen here. But just to go back to the pop cans, here's the picture of the pop cans that I put up earlier. And you can see I've got 3 flowers per each pop can in here. I don't have any dinner plate dahlias in this particular collection. If it was a dinner plate dahlia, there would only be 1. The stems are short, as you can see, which is great because you can use short-stemmed flowers for the pop cans. And as I mentioned earlier, people will buy them and possibly buy a vase as well. Now I sell them for $4 each a can, and if you buy 3 cans, it's 10 bucks. So that's a price point that works really, really well for me. I think it's all very dependent on where you live and who your market is. I don't believe in people giving out numbers that this is what you should do, because we're talking the world here when we're on YouTube, and the world economy is completely different from country to country, and even in each country, from area to area, it's quite different. But you asked, so I'm answering that. But that doesn't mean that that's the right price for you. Now, as far as borage goes, I love borage, and I do use it in bouquets, but it wilts in extreme heat, so I can only use it on cloudy or rainy days. And here's just a few bouquets that I have used borage in. Oh, actually, I only put up 1 bouquet. So here's a bouquet that I put borage up in, and it's the little blue flower, of course, that's poking out the top. So those are the questions that I had for my January videos. Now, as promised, I am going to put up a link to my, oh, now I have to look that up again, how to DIY a pumpkin stem, as well as my top 10 dahlias. And I hope to see you on Saturday when I show you how I start my dahlia tubers. See you then. Bye.